Hi everyone, it's Natalie here again, and I'm here to show and tell. I'm here to share my tarot card of the year. So my tarot card of 2019, the Wheel of Fortune. So this is a new thing for me. Not the Wheel of Fortune, but a tarot card of the year that is dictated through numerological calculation rather than drawing a card from the deck. I have Googled a little bit about this as I understand it from videos and so forth, and I think I probably went on too big of a what is that? What does that mean? How is that calculated? What does it do? I think I went a little overboard. You'll see in a minute. In trying to figure that out and learn it, it sounds like it came from a book originally called Tarot for Yourself, which I've never gotten, I've never read, I don't know anything about it. And actually, as I start this video, we'll say now, I would be really curious if anyone in the community is watching this, please comment and give me any insights that you have that, or information that I don't have. I would love to know that. I would love to hear, really anything about what I'm about to say, corrections, insights, references, further information, whatever you got. So I'll just start with I was surprised because it wasn't, as I understand it, it was not the same as, the way that I would normally add things up. So I think if I was going to add things up, I don't remember I know it came out as the sun. So the first time I added everything up, and put all the numbers together, I would have done it. So my birthday is 12/13. So I was going 1 plus 2 plus 1 plus 3 plus 2 plus 0 plus 1 plus 9. And that came out as the sun card. Came out to 19. And so I was like, okay, well, that's my card. Well, then I did it the way that I found it online, that I think was the way that Simon on Hermit's Cave was talking about it, which is then, was to add it. Let's see, I have an example. Anyway, I added it, you put 12 and then you put 13 under it and then you put the year under it and you add it, long ways that way. And when I did that, I came out with 10. Yeah. So if you add the quantity of 12 plus 13 plus 2019, you're adding 25 to 2019, you get a different number. And then adding those together. Well, so I did that because I was like, okay, so then it, comes out like this. And a little further research revealed okay, that is clearly the way that folks are doing it. So, that's more accurate. Seems to be that sound just now was not me farting. That was my chair. Just throwing that out there. I would own the fart, but that was my chair. Anyway, so thinking, okay, well, that's interesting. So then I guess last year would be one less. That would mean that last year was, 2018, which was a really tough year for me, if I'm totally honest. Really, really tough. I had a really great job. I was loving that job. Felt very, very much like it was my calling in some ways. And yet I kind of knew that it wasn't. I knew that I needed to shift things. Like my partner, Tom, would say, I had started to outgrow it, which is interesting. I was teaching and directing theater at a university. The university was not willing to fund any further, any of my work further. My department would have loved it, but and I think the dean would have been okay with it, but the people who make the decisions and have the money were like, yeah, we need to cut, we got books to balance, and, they run education like it's a business. Video for another time, I'll tell you. But anyway, or it's a blog post, something else. Anyhow, so I left that job. It was heartbreaking. I had I had students that I was so close with. I had been there through their whole development, their journey as people and human beings. Um, Directed probably one of the most fulfilling shows I've ever done. It was like my dream production, um, which was the Three Penny Opera. I love Brecht. I know a lot of people in the U.S. really don't, but I wasn't trained in the U.S. for the most part. Most of my training came from being in Britain and in the UK, and my mentor there really loved Brecht, and so we studied it a lot, and we studied him a lot. So it was tough. It was very tough. And then, so I left the university, and I've been in universities or drama schools, either learning or teaching, since 1994, save for the short time I had a break and it was away from it. But I've been in pretty much the whole time. I think there's like maybe 4 years in there where I wasn't. The rest of it I was. So it's really tough. And I realized I was called back to doing spiritual work. I was called back to, and the first time I left theater work, I was called back. I was called, rather, to ordaining, which is interesting because I had the hermit. But I ordained as a novice. Eventually, I don't think I did it first. At first, I went into a seminary program in a Buddhist temple in Chicago, because I wanted to become a chaplain and I wanted to work. I felt strongly pulled to work with the dying and the bereaved. And so when I left this year, when I left the university, I realized, and my Buddhist path has taken so many different turns and twists over the years that have been really challenging and really difficult. And I will most decidedly go into that at some point in a video, but I don't want to derail towards that today. But that work of being with the dying was something I never fully got over. I've always felt drawn back to doing that. And when I left the university, I thought, okay, I'll look into more like healing work. And then was speaking with somebody who said, being with the dying now is different. There's an emerging field called being a death doula or an end-of-life doula. So I found that, researched it. It sounded 100% right up my alley, exactly what I was looking to do. So, and then not long after, I decided, like, hey, that would be a great thing to do. Right after that, I went on a retreat out in Colorado and shifted from, I guess, being practice-wise as a Buddhist. I was really more in the territory of Zen and insight meditation, so Theravada. And I shifted very, very, very drastically from that right into Vajrayana Tibetan Buddhism. I went to study, and really I just went to retreat. I really just wanted a retreat to clear my head and, begin fresh, kind of cleanse things out. And that is not what the universe had in store. That was not something we should probably talk about at some point, is egregores. That's a big one. But the egregores of that tradition had something else in mind, and I really believe that. There were just too many things that lined up in a particular way, and yeah. So now I find myself acquiring, ritual implements and drums and bells, and learning all of these different practices, which again takes us more into like shamanic practices and shamanic traditions than and magic, ritual magic, than pure religion. So this is weird. Like, for me, it's very not at all what I had intended, and yet it completely feels right. So I don't know. I read somewhere that if it's a hermit year, that those kinds of religious, changes to religion and spirituality, they're not unheard of. It's not an unusual occurrence. So I find that fascinating. Um, Again, just not what I expected, but absolutely right, if that makes any sense. I feel a lot more comfortable, whereas I don't know, maybe, this kind of the nature of things flowing like this, with Wheel of Fortune. I mean, the leaving things to chance, having them be up in the air. What I'm about to do is find the way to start my business. I do have my first client that I'm working with right now, as a doula. I love it. I really, this particular client happens to be in a nursing home. I could be with people in a nursing home. I love it there. I don't know why. I've always loved nursing homes. Well, that's a bit extra there. I've always loved being with elderly people, and I've always found that when I visit nursing homes, um, the level of presence that the residents have is something that just warms my heart no end. I can be with them and gaze into their eyes, and um, I just get met with so much love, so much presence, so much beauty and immediacy that I just fall a little bit in love with the people that are there, and that's why that's really why I want to work with people who are bereaved and dying. When we go through those experiences, they're horrible. They're very difficult. They're some of the worst things we ever face in life, to face death, to face losing a loved one. And yet, at the same time, there is never a point in our lives, I think, where we're more alive, where we're more immediate, where where things make more sense, um, and yet make no sense at all. I mean, I think, they're very, those are moments that are very yin yang. They're very temperance. They're very like they're not dual. You can't, some of the worst, most horrific experiences of my life have been some of the ones where the most joy and the most beauty was available of anywhere in my life. So, I think that's at the crux of it. So the idea that, that the wheel of fortune is spinning this year and shifting me here and shifting me there and so forth, probably in a very positive way, really is not upsetting. I feel like I went through so much last year. I spent a lot of the summer depressed. So during a time where I might have been doing work on my house, or taking more, just doing more, because I am a beer. I like to be, and equally, I'm busy, man. Not because I'm busy, classically busy, but because I like to do stuff. I'm curious about the world. There's always something I want to study or learn, um, or learn about or make. I'm an artist, so I do a lot with art and art making. And I just was so depressed. It was hard even to immerse myself in art, and to work with plants and work with, plants. I love plants, trees, leaves. I couldn't even do that. I couldn't even pick up my succulents. I love succulents. I love them so much, and I have this huge collection of them. I didn't spend as much time making pottery. It was just I couldn't even stitch a quilt. It was bad. It was really tough. It was a very, very difficult time. And yeah, it was really rough. So Then I got a job working for a bereavement center for children, and that didn't work out either. And that was heartbreaking. And it happened after I already bought a new car, and it just didn't work out. It was for a nonprofit. And their view of things and my view of things were just really incompatible, even though the work was stunning and the organization was wonderful. So, and does a lot of really good things in our local community. So there we go. So I ended up right before Christmas with no job, ready to just tell 2018, put it in the trash and stick it out on the street, because boy, was it a stinker. So this looks a lot better. Lots better. In the same moment that I was like interested in that, and I'm going back and going, oh, well, that's very interesting. Like it's so cool to see that like last year was a hermit year. I then became interested in, okay, well then what's next year? What's coming then? Oh, look at that. Justice. Oh, I wonder what that means. Well, I can't know what that means because I'm not there yet. I don't know what I've done this year that might give me insight into next year. So that got me started on this whole thing of needing to know what years were what cards. I made initially a stupid assumption. Because I know a lot about astrology, I thought I knew maybe even more than what I do know about tarot, and decided that, oh, well, if 2019 is the Wheel of Fortune and 2018 was the Hermit, 2017 surely must have been Strength, and on and on and on. So I then began cycling through the entire 22 card major arcana the way one would through an astrological chart, assuming that it follows that structure, which it doesn't. And getting to a point where I'm like, wait a minute, how is that possible? Because if my birth year came out as High Priestess card, something doesn't add up. Because I think I started at the, where I am now, and then at a certain point was like, wait, so what was I at birth? Oh, that would be interesting, because again, I'm thinking about astrology. So what was my birth card? What was in that year? And it came out as High Priestess, which is fascinating. And I'm still trying to figure that one out. It sent me on this whole long thing. Again, I've said, like, I need to understand, swear I'm not a conspiracy theorist and I'm not nuts. I really am not, or at least not any more nuts than anybody else. But yeah, look at that. I started going through every year from now all the way back to birth, right? And it then continued on. You guys, like, here's where I started. This is where I did all my math. Look at all that math. See that math? That's a lot of math. I did that for every year. Look at this. All the way, the reflection. Here we go. All the way up to like the age of 90 and beyond, just to see like, well, where does that cycle go? And obviously you start to identify that there's a cycle, and that sometimes you go back to certain cards and then you don't go back to them again. So interesting thing to note, the last time I had a cycle, with the Lovers in it was 2015, and it's when I met my partner Tom, who is definitely, all the stuff that's in the Lovers card that's supposed to be there, that you're supposed to read into that, that's Tom. And I'm 43, I'm not married. I've been engaged a couple of times. I've been through multiple serious relationships. I then started to think, wait a minute, this is when I was just working backwards and realized, whoa, Tom, look, the Lovers card came up that year that we met. It then made me think, did the Lovers card come up any other year? And that it's just sent me on this like wild ride of looking at what are the patterns inherent in my life. What are the things I was learning in those years? What did those cards mean? Then I encounter with something like, there's something like the card of your birth. This is where I need the help, guys. If you know something and I'm just screwing this up and not getting it, please tell me. I don't, I'm good with being corrected. I love it actually, because I just want to know the truth. But so I guess the shadow card of High Priestess, and this is no shock. If anyone out there is someone who already knows me, this is no shock that the Justice would be the shadow for this one. It's not fair. That's not fair. That has been the screaming cry of my life. The like, but I think this should have happened this way. Why? But I did all the stuff. I filled in all the blanks. I played by all the rules. Did everything the way it was supposed to be. It's not fair that I should come up with something that's not what's happening. So fascinating. And I've spent so much time. I do a lot of work with psychology on myself, which is again why I got away from tarot. But then I realized how much tarot really matches up with psychology. And there's just so much there. Looking at Jung, I love Carl Jung so much. And looking at a system that I work with right now with my current therapist, who I've been working with for years, probably 10 years this year, which is very interesting to think about. I mean, it's been a long time. It's a long relationship. She's seen me through some of the most difficult years of my life, honestly. So many death card years. So, not literally, but well, we could go back and check the list, but, maybe that was the theme of, there's maybe a theme of the year, but I can tell you right now, the Tower and the Death card would have been like, they were just huge for a couple of different years. Had a lot of Tower years, a lot. But, she's been through me while I've sat and cried over, like, this is just not fair. I've worked so hard. I've done so much of this, so much of that. Just not fair. So I'm really fascinated to learn more about this and learn more about this. And I'm interested too in how this, what is this archetype? Who is she? Just have fun and games with cameras here. And why, it's just fascinating. I don't, there's a lot to know there. I know that I think probably said this in another video. I'll probably and undoubtedly say it in many more. I have my North Node is in Scorpio. So a friend of mine who is an astrologer, and I talk about this from time to time, and when I saw her this summer, she said, Natalie, you've got to just, put yourself out there. Ta-da! Yeah. But, put yourself out there, and you've got to, really take ownership of being the spiritual person that you are. Your ride in this life is to be, spiritual. It's to work on behalf of other people. It's to offer your spiritual gifts and just put yourself out there and let people fund you, which is fascinating. And terrifying. And, I have a Taurus South Node, which actually in my 20s, I used to really be like, oh, that's terrible. Taurus is awful. That's bad. It's really not. I mean, if that's the shadow, boy, I've got a lot of gifts back in there. I spent some time meditating, sitting on a cushion, most of 2010, 11, and 12. And one day I literally got up off of the cushion and was like, I have to create stuff. And instead of just being, into theater and movement and artwork, theater and movement and dance, it really shifted me into a music, away from performance and into and writing. I'd always done a lot of writing too, but it really shifted me toward away from just that and more toward visual arts. So suddenly I had this terrible need to cut up cloth and make things and learn to paint, learn to draw, really fill in the other half of the artistic work I'd never really had a chance to engage in. And it was tremendous. It was really, and it was shocking, and it was a lot. I can't remember even where I was going to go with that. Wow, got really derailed. suffice it to say, yeah, it's learning, learning like how to put myself out there spiritually with things has been rough. And I did realize a few years ago, I guess I can edit some of this out, can't I? If I get down to it and I really don't like what I'm saying. Anyway, if what I realized a few years ago, I really realized I wanted to be a Buddhist teacher. I decided I was going to try to do that. I tried the chaplaincy. I thought, okay, maybe I can go into like being a Buddhist teacher. I kept falling on my face over and over and over again. And I have some theories about why that was. In part, I don't work well with patriarchy. If system is really highly patriarchal, I'm just being honest, it's not going to work well for me because I don't follow rules blindly. And I'm not willing to take somebody's word for something without testing it. And I know that that's a major tenet of Buddhist philosophy. You, of course, listen to your teachers. Of course, read the text, read the sutras, learn everything you possibly can. And then you have to put it to work. You have to put it into practice. You have to put it into your experience. You have to try hard. You have to work hard. And you then have to take the fruit of your experience and then use that to understand something in a way that is unique to you. So you might, and this is why they say the sutras, the texts, they are the finger pointing at the moon, but they're not the moon itself. They're the finger pointing to it. So you begin to realize, oh, that's what that is. And I've had that experience working with the tarot as well, of like, oh, this is in theory what this means. And then having to pause and stop because I realize, oh, wait a minute. Yeah, the moment I'm in, the experience I'm having, that's what a tower moment is. That's what is really meant by death. Or this wasn't really so much death as it was, 10 of swords, right? Or something of that ilk, or a 3 of swords. So, it's learning to discern, it's learning to, take all of those things in. But what I really couldn't abide was working with teachers that could not let me do that and discern it and understand it for myself without having to quantify and qualify my experience for me. And as a teacher, I just found that aspect of things excruciating, because when I teach students, I want them to do that for themselves. I want them to be empowered. I want them to know who they are. I want them to trust who they are. I want them to eventually have no need for me at all whatsoever because they know that they can trust themselves. So to have teachers that were like, no, I know better than you, and you will never know enough for yourself that you can really function independently, was like, okay, no, I'm done. And I walked away from not one, but 2 Buddhist orders. I did find a third that I really loved. And well, did I really love it? I can't say I really loved it. If I really loved it, I'd probably be there now. I think it was filled with people that I loved and fell in love with, which is a very easy thing for me because I love people. And falling in love with people of any different type and so on is just really just like, welcome to my life. That's how I am. People are just so beautiful. I just love them so much. So it was full of beautiful people. It was full of people I could easily love. I think the teacher he was the real deal. He was really, the head of that order was so good and so sincere and so wonderful. And I was in 2015, which for me was a lover's card year. And I knew instinctively if I don't heal the wound of needing to find a partner, I could spend the rest of my life in a monastery playing that pattern out over and over and over again and reliving that cyclically without ever really healing it. Didn't even mean to bring that all the way around to that point, but kind of worked out. It's kind of nice when that happens. But yeah, so instead of going into that order and becoming a monastic, and I think they were, when they realized that I had been seeking that elsewhere before I found them, they were really excited because I think they would have been happy to have a Western woman that's an English, fluent English speaker in that order, but it just wasn't the moment. It just wasn't. So anyway, I had to go my own path, and I did discover an order. It's the Tara Mandala organization that's run by Lama Tsultrim Alione, and it's in Colorado. And she is a Westerner. She's an amazing woman. And it is full of like independent, amazing women who all work together and do their own thing and function their own way. And it's beautiful. So, I had already kind of done that and realized like I'm going to have to be more of an independent practitioner, and I'm fine with that. It is really hard because it's hard to hold yourself to account, and it's hard to, you're just always a salmon swimming upstream. So I think it then becomes a balance of life between, when am I swimming upstream and when do I just literally go with the flow because that's the only way to function here. It's life. It's always full of really beautiful insights and new things that I guess we can't learn any other way, and that's why we're here. So thank you for listening. If you've gotten to the end of this, you're awesome. I just shared a whole bunch of crazy, wild things. And I'm so grateful to just find a platform of really amazing people to do that with. So if you got this far, thank you. Yep, that's all I got to say for now. And hopefully more to share later. Take care. Have a beautiful, beautiful 2019, anyone who's watching this. And if you're watching this, you're probably somebody that I would probably already fall in love with as well anyway. So, Happy New Year to you.